It was 14:30 hours when a Ukrainian drone crew began what should have been an ordinary surveillance and strike run. But within minutes, the entire mission would flip into chaos. Because high above a shattered bridge, their SHARK-D reconnaissance drone circled like a silent predator, unaware that something below was watching back. The bridge was the perfect choke point, a damaged crossing, a funnel of twisted steel, and beneath it, a slow-moving Russian convoy towing a 152mm howitzer, a textbook target. At least that's what the operators thought, until they realized their drone wasn't stalking the enemy anymore. It was the enemy that had started stalking them. Every time the SHARK-D transmitted live video, it was like shining a flashlight in the dark. Its signal bled across the electromagnetic spectrum, loud, traceable, impossible to hide. And the Russians? They had the ears to hear it. That convoy crawled forward at barely 15 kilometers per hour. Ukrainian strike teams waited 4 kilometers away. But between them and the target sat 3 separate Russian defensive layers. The same ones that had already knocked over 30 Ukrainian drones out of the sky. Front and center among those defenses was the Zoopark 1 counter-battery radar system. Originally, it wasn't even meant to hunt drones. It was built to track incoming artillery shells, calculate their trajectory, and send return fire back to the guns that fired them. But the Russians had adapted. Drone pilots transmit radio waves. Radio waves have direction. Direction gives location. And once the radar knows where you're transmitting from, 3 minutes later, artillery rains down on that grid square. Ukrainian operators were painfully aware of the statistics. If you broadcast from the same spot for longer than 5 minutes, there's nearly a 40% chance your next transmission is your last. The Russians called the tactic counter-reconnaissance by fire. No visual needed, just detect, calculate, obliterate. So the Ukrainian team had evolved too. Their control link was hopping through 128 frequencies every second, never lingering long enough for the Zoopark system to lock onto them. Their transmissions came in microbursts, 0.3 seconds of data, then 30 seconds of total silence. Enough to steer the drone, not long enough to be found. But then things took a sharper turn. Thermal sensors on the SHARK-D picked up an approaching signature. A Russian Orlan-10 drone sweeping in from the north. That single detection changed everything. If an Orlan was inbound, it meant Russian forces were already suspicious and were now deploying airborne hunters. And the Orlan's thermal camera? It could identify the heat signature of a human body from 2 kilometers away. The Ukrainian crew had to choose: stay exposed to keep eyes on the target, or disappear under thermal blankets and effectively blind themselves. They chose survival, but before hiding, they needed to warn the strike team positioned 4 kilometers away. Normally, this would require a direct radio handoff, coordinates, timing, attack route. But if both teams transmitted at once, their electromagnetic signature would double. They might as well light flares and wave at the Zoopark radar. So instead, they tried something unconventional. The SHARK-D released what the operators call a digital breadcrumb, a tiny encrypted packet transmitted on 433 megahertz, a frequency Russia rarely monitored for drone control. Inside that 0.3 second packet were exact GPS coordinates, convoy speed, wind direction, recommended attack vector, everything the strike crew required. Too quick to triangulate, too secure to break, too unusual in frequency to even register. The strike team received it. Meanwhile, the convoy pushed slowly across the crippled bridge, metal screeching under its weight. They had perhaps 10 minutes before the Russians cleared the choke point. But between the Ukrainian attackers and that convoy were the same 3 Russian defensive layers that had chewed through dozens of drones already. At 14:45, the FPV operator armed his attack drone, a 7-inch carbon fiber frame carrying a 2-kilogram shaped charge. Battery 16.8 volts. Flight time, roughly 7 minutes. The target was 4 minutes out. On paper, simple. In reality, not even close. The strike drone launched low, hugging the terrain as if trying to disappear into the landscape. Its motor buzzed quietly, a thin mechanical heartbeat racing toward the objective. For the first 800 meters, the flight path was smooth. No interference, no jamming, no unexpected movement from the convoy. But then the operator noticed it. Static, small at first, then sharpening. A smear of distortion cut through the video feed, not total jamming. The Russian Repellent 1 mobile jammer had just powered on. This system was essentially the equivalent of running a microwave with the door wide open, except instead of reheating leftovers, it was frying every drone frequency within half a kilometer. 400 watts of concentrated electromagnetic disruption flooded the spectrum. Even from 2 kilometers away, its output was still hitting 25 watts per square meter. The drone's transmitter, meanwhile, pushed only 25 milliwatts. It was like trying to whisper during a hurricane. The operator cycled through channels and finally dropped down to 433 megahertz, a band normally outside the jammer's focus. A faint connection returned, grainy, delayed, barely holding together, but functional. The video now looked like something from a mid-2000s flip phone, about 10 frames per second. Not ideal, but it was something. At 1.5 kilometers, even that fallback frequency began to fail. The Russians weren't relying on a single jammer. They had layers, a mounted system on the vehicle, portable jammers placed every 200 meters along trench lines, and somewhere deeper behind their positions, likely a Pole 21 area denial system. 3 separate systems overlapping, covering different bands, a full electronic dead zone. But unlike a real black hole, the Ukrainians still had an escape method. The drone carried an AI module trained on 10,000 hours of combat footage. It could identify vehicles, lock onto them, and guide itself to impact. But it needed visual contact for at least 2 seconds to lock on, and only within a 400-meter range. That meant the drone had to push another 800 meters through the electronic storm completely blind just to get the opportunity. Flying any higher meant drifting into the range of Russian electronic warfare trucks stationed along the road. These units didn't need to intercept the signal. They only needed to flood the airwaves and force the drone to crash. For a brief moment, the connection steadied. Clearer picture, better visibility. Then the SHARK-D, still circling above like a watchtower, detected something else. 2 Russian soldiers stepping out of the convoy vehicle, heads tilted toward the sky, listening. If they heard the FPV's motor even faintly, they could start firing blindly into the brush or worse, broadcast its direction to the EW teams. And all of this while the damaged bridge continued shaking with every passing vehicle. The strike drone was now 2.8 kilometers out. The operator opened the throttle slightly. Speed increased. Battery drain ticked upward, but they needed to cross the danger zone before the Zoopark 1 radar recalibrated. Behind them, the Ukrainian mission commander watched his tablet screen flicker with incoming data. He understood the risk. Every FPV flight path leaves a tiny imprint of electromagnetic noise. Once the Russians pick up those footprints, they can predict the drone's arc. That prediction gives them one terrifying advantage. They can guess where the pilot is hiding. The strike team repositioned quickly, moving 10 meters at a time under layers of thermal shielding. Not enough to cool instantly, but enough to break the human silhouette. All while the convoy ahead unknowingly drove straight toward danger. At the bridge's exit point, the Russian howitzer crew jumped down to inspect the supports. One soldier tapped a beam with his rifle butt. Another pointed to cracks widening with each vibration. The SHARK-D zoomed in. Perfect target alignment, perfect timing. But trouble arrived again, this time from the south. The Orlan-10 reappeared. Unlike the Ukrainian drone, the Orlan didn't need precise coordinates. It only needed to spot the direction of the FPV's movement. Once it identified the attack vector, it could relay that to the jamming units, who would respond by saturating those frequencies with noise. The FPV feed glitched again. Harder this time. The operator's heart spiked. "This is it," he muttered. "Either push through or lose the drone entirely." He shifted pathways, flying between 2 tree lines that created a narrow tunnel of shadow. The drone skimmed through branches so closely that leaves slapped the camera. 1.9 kilometers out, battery at 70%, speed steady. The Russian convoy was now exiting the bridge, the howitzer slowly crawling forward as soldiers shouted to each other over the grinding metal. Then came the signal the Ukrainians feared most, a sharp spike on their spectrum analyzer. Someone on the Russian side had just activated a directional jammer. Not broad noise, not random static. A focused beam sweeping the area like a searchlight. If that beam lined up with the FPV's frequency for even a second, the drone would freeze mid-air and drop. The operator felt his palms go damp. His whole focus narrowed down to a single trembling video feed. He slid the controls gently, altering altitude by half a meter, just enough to slip under the angle of the beam. "Hold, hold." The picture steadied. Then the horizon flipped as he dived low into a drainage ditch. flying only a meter above the mud. 1.2 kilometers out, the howitzer was now fully exposed. Russian troops continued shouting, unaware that death was racing toward them just above the ground. The SHARK-D's operator relayed a simple message through the microburst system. Target vulnerable. Strike window. 40 seconds. The FPV pilot took a slow breath. Final approach. No second chances. No turning back. The FPV drone pushed forward, its electric whine now barely audible beneath the gusting wind funneling through the ditch. Every second mattered. The Russian jammer beam swept the area again, brighter, stronger, angrier, searching for the intruder it sensed but could not see. Inside the Ukrainian control shelter, the team watched the signal strength fluctuate like a heartbeat under stress. The commander leaned in. Keep it underground. Keep it shadowed. Do not break pattern. The operator understood. One wrong climb, one tiny rise above the ditch, and the FPV's signal would be swallowed whole. He tightened his grip, guiding the drone through the narrow mud trench like threading a needle in a storm. 900 meters. The Russian Orlan-10 circled wider now, its patrol radius tightening around the bridge. Its operators had clearly realized the attack was close, maybe seconds away, but they still didn't know where. That uncertainty, those few seconds of confusion, were the Ukrainians' only advantage. On the bridge, the Russian troops were now climbing back onto the howitzer. They were preparing to roll out again, completely unaware that a drone was racing toward them. Locked on, unwavering, death in motion. The damaged bridge groaned as the heavy weapons started to move. Metal scraped, engines roared, boots clattered over steel plates. The SHARK-D repositioned for the final camera angle, sending down crystal clear visuals. The howitzer centered perfectly the bridge behind it, fractured and vulnerable, and the FPV charging like a bullet with wings 600 meters. The video feed flickered just once. The jammer beam had skimmed the FPV's frequency. Push! Push it through! The commander shouted. The pilot flipped the drone sideways, using the ditch's slanted walls as cover. The feed stabilized again, though the edges shook like a handheld camera in a sprint. 400 meters. Battery at 54%. The operator whispered to himself, steadying his breath. This is it. Now or never. He climbed the drone out of the ditch, just a few meters, slipping into the open like a predator breaking from tall grass. The howitzer filled the screen now, closer, closer, growing enormous. Russian soldiers at the rear suddenly reacted. One pointed, another lifted his rifle, a third shouted warning. But the FPV was already committed. Too fast, too low, too locked in to be stopped. The operator armed the warhead. The beeping tone echoed softly in his headphones. 200 meters. A soldier fired wildly. Bullets sparked against the road. One shot pinged past the drone's tail, close enough to jolt the camera. The pilot didn't flinch. 100 meters. The howitzer's crew scrambled back, panic breaking their formation. Too late. The FPV screamed forward in a final acceleration, the ground blurring beneath it. A straight, merciless line toward its target. 50 meters, 20 meters, 5 meters. The screen detonated into a white flash, then black, followed by the distant thunder of the explosion captured by the SHARK-D seconds later. A towering fireball erupted at the front of the convoy. Shrapnel tore through the deck, through the crew cabin, through the bridge itself. The howitzer was lifted off its wheels and slammed sideways like a toy hurled by a giant. Smoke rolled across the riverbank. Secondary blasts cracked through the air as ammunition inside the vehicle ignited. The Russian troops ran for cover, stunned, scrambling in chaos. Above them, the SHARK-D kept recording, cold, steady, unmoving, archiving every flicker of flame and every plume of gray smoke. In the Ukrainian shelter, the FPV operator exhaled for the first time in nearly a minute. Signal lost. Mission complete. The commander placed a hand on the operator's shoulder. Good hit, he said quietly. Noisy bridge is quiet now. Far below, the burning howitzer toppled against the fractured support column, the same one the Russian soldier had tapped moments earlier. The weight of the explosion deepened the crack, sending chunks of concrete into the river. The convoy halted behind the wreckage, trapped. The Ukrainians had achieved exactly what they needed: neutralize the target, choke the movement, and expose the entire route. And it was all done by a drone small enough to fit inside a backpack. The battlefield had changed, and everyone watching knew it. If you found this cinematic breakdown powerful and informative, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next deep dive documentary. Thanks for watching.